Okay. Pat, would you like to?
How has talk radio changed, or has the audience changed, or has your presentation changed? You've got a lot of raw meat coming your way.
Yeah, I don't think the presentation changes much, or talk radio has changed much. We're pretty much true to ourselves. We know who we are. We know what our brand is. We know who we are servicing and who our listeners are. And we're out there again when the left is dominating most of the media formats out there: television, print. You see social media now with Google and Facebook and Twitter all being dominated by the left, to the point now where conservatives are being censored in such great numbers. Talk radio remains the truest form of expression for conservatives and for everybody, really. Anybody can reach out, pick up the phone, call the host, talk about the topics that are hot today. It's unfiltered. President Trump really hit on a great concept when he dubbed it fake news, because all of that is pretty much, the media is the propaganda wing of the left. So we are there to provide a platform and a forum, going all the way back to Joe Pine and getting up on the soapbox those days, into the Arthur Godfrey. We're a one-on-one medium. We're reaching out, connecting directly to the listeners, and providing a forum for them to express themselves.
Now, Bruce Elliott, you are in a key time slot at WCBM, 9 till 12. So you get a lot of calls and you deal with a lot of people. I'll ask you the same question because you're a veteran talk show host. You've been around a while. Have you sensed any difference or change, since it seems like the radicals and the left, as Sean pointed out, have dominated the media so much, and it's grown in its domination. Even with the new social media, they dominate. So talk radio is like the last bastion of free speech out there, where you get another viewpoint. But have you noticed a difference in things as over the years?
Well, there's a difference in me. Going back to Joe Pine, I don't yell at all anymore. It's something that I just don't do.
It's a sense of maturity, Bruce.
Yeah, well, I suppose I'll get there sooner or later, Pat. But no, I mean, I just think it's not productive. It doesn't actually bring what I want to bring to the microphone, which is civil discourse. You want to be able to actually say, this is what I believe in, this is why.
Right.
I tend to think in terms that other people don't tend to think in. Did a conversation on the air about the philosophy of actually trying to determine through empirical evidence what is good, what is bad.
Yeah.
And if you could define what a chair is, we do have the capacity to define what is good. We do it by observation and by common sense, but there's also a way of empirically going about that. And that grows into a lot of things. That grows into, well, is conservatism good? Is liberalism good? I would argue that the old-style liberals, the Scoop Jackson, the Hubert Humphrey, that wing of the Democrat Party no longer exists.
It's gone.
That the drivers now in the Democrat Party are the Democrat socialists. And you can drop the word Democrat from the beginning of that, and they'll be pretty comfortable with it. And I would argue that form of government doesn't work. It's an observable failure every single time it's been tried. And I would argue that conservatism, in other words, moving toward individual freedom, moving toward liberty to whatever degree we can, that does work. So to me, it's just a rational mind. If you're saying, this system doesn't work, this one does work, which one should I choose? Well, I'll tend to go with the things that work, just on a practical basis.
You would hope.
Yeah, well, it's like I sometimes think that people look at politics from either point of view and they say, every problem is a nail and the only tool I have is a hammer. And actually, every problem is not a nail. There are all kinds of different problems that you can only actually address if you understand what the problem is and then determine what the right tool to use is to get at it.
Well, you want to think sometimes, I was in elected office for 20 years, and it's very frustrating, I got to tell you. You would think that politicians or elected representatives would want to try, like Bruce just said, find an answer that works, find a solution. I think you would be successful if you did that. Now, we live in an area where Baltimore City is front page news all the time. And one of the things about talk radio, especially local talk radio, not so much Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity, but you guys, is the fact that you handle and get involved with a lot of hot potatoes in the local news. We have a new mayor because the other mayor was corrupt. Okay, so Baltimore City, there's always something there, and you always have to answer for that, Sean.
Yeah, I think it'd be great instead of actually voting for the mayor. I think they should have boxing matches where you could get two candidates and whoever comes out of the ring could end up. No, we think, at least I think the key is my goal is to bring the most compelling talk hosts in the country to Baltimore at WCBM. And I think we've done that. And every once in a while, I think politicians are listening because you hear it back either in terms of legislation like you've done or in ideas that are now coming or bubbling to the top.
Yeah. Now, Bruce, what do you think about the future of talk radio? Is talk radio now, if Hillary had won or if the era of Trump goes by and these socialists gain power, I'll give you an interesting statistic. Mark Levin was talking about this. 29% of the American people, they did a big poll, support the idea of impeachment. And Mark Levin said that 29% represents the nutcases in the voting pattern. You know, the ones that would vote for people like Bernie or Elizabeth Warren. That's about 29% is about it. But you've talked many times, you said, but the problem is they punch way above their weight. They control the entertainment industry, they control the media, they now control, obviously, the Democrat Party. So what is the future of talk radio?
I think actually talk radio has a very bright future because it is a genuine form of human interaction. You know, talk radio is the original social media. All the people get on and type on their stuff on Facebook or Pinterest, whatever you go on. We are actually the original social media. If people wanted to have interactions with people in the community with whom they agree or disagree, it's through this medium because we have the ability to be flexible. It's not always the biggest and the strongest that win. It's the most agile. It's the most flexible, the one who's most able to change on the fly. You get too many people involved in television in order to get product involved and product on the air in order to change this quickly. If Sean comes up against a topic that pops up at 7:20 in the morning, or I face something at 9:45 in the morning that isn't at all what I'd prepped for, but it's a great topic, I'm going to be a dope if I stick with the stuff I'd prepped for.
I think two important driving factors for talk radio are immediacy, as Bruce has put out, and intimacy. Ours is a one-on-one format. Again, we're talking to each individual listener, and they're reacting or listening. Let's face it, 98% of people don't call. It's only 2%.
Oh, yeah, it's very
2%
small.
of the audience calls. So we're trying to connect with each listener on a one-on-one basis, vis-a-vis Arthur Godfrey. He was an amazing person, the way he did that. And that's really the birth of talk radio.
The likability of the host.
Yeah, exactly. You connect with listeners. It's your brand. It's your credibility.
Yeah, so it's listener radio. I mean, it's talk radio, but it's listener radio.
It's listener-driven.
Because your audience is about 10 times the size of anybody that would call in there. So we're going to go into your intellectual capacity as experienced talk.
Bruce was hoping you
This
weren't
is
going to do
dangerous.
that.
Yeah. I defer to Sean.
Well, I'll just talk to Sean. No, this is good. Everybody likes this.
Well,
kind of stuff.
let me ask you a question. When I work, I see in my mind's eye exactly who I'm talking to. I've done a psychographic, demographic breakdown of this. This is the man I'm talking to. This is the woman I'm talking to.
And you get used to doing that.
You get accustomed to these are the individuals who I'm talking to. Do you do that?
Yeah, I think we all do it. I mean, you visualize, you try to, that's what, you're customizing your audience, you're personalizing
You can
it.
tell.
You're not talking to the masses.
No.
And that's the key with talk. Why talk radio is so successful, you're talking to one person at a time versus...
And you got to think that way.
Versus that mass broadcast. When television, by definition, does that.
Yeah.
TV's a whole different medium. But I do agree with the social media component because we were the first real interactive format out there.
That's the first time I've heard that, but that is very true, actually. And social media is going to continue to grow. But, all right, here's the question. I'll start with you, Sean. Who do you predict will survive the Democrat primary and become the nominee of the Democrat presidential election?
I really think that Joe Biden, his true colors will come out and he will crash and burn.
I agree.
Okay, I'm not sure that Bernie Sanders will get the nomination because I really think, as messed up as the Democrats are, they're not going to put an avowed socialist at the top of the ticket because it will be a
Yeah,
slaughter.
but remember that 29% that Mark Levin was talking about, they are like 60%
right, so,
in
so
the
they're going to
primary.
find probably something in a nicer package.
Oh, my.
And they may even go with something. Look, the one that
Kamala
would concern
Harris?
me, Kamala Harris, would concern me because she's the female Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So that and I think I would be concerned about Kamala. This is far from over. I do think there could be, not that there'd be a surprise candidate, but there could be someone that comes out of the pack that we didn't
Like
look
Dracula coming out of the fog, Hillary could come upon us.
Yeah, actually, that's my prediction. She's making campaign speeches right
at. She's
now.
not dead yet.
Yeah, she's making campaign speeches.
Right.
Listen to what she's doing in her talk. She's not talking about the ex-secretary
Wow.
of state.
And listen, if there's anybody who knows how to play hardball, political hardball, it's the Clintons. And it wouldn't look what she did to Bernie last time
This is a
out.
perfect setup for her.
She's out there lurking in the weeds or the woods, I should say, and
Now, under the bridge, actually, I think is typical.
and she is just. Remember, they've got raw FBI files on everybody, so I think the Clintons are not done yet.
Well, anyway, I would say this. I agree with you totally. I think Biden, the socialist beast, will devour him at some point, number one. Number two, his own record, 40 years, will devour him, and his own stupidity of making mistakes will devour him. So I think he's a house of cards that could crumble very quickly. I think it then falls into Elizabeth Warren and Bernie, and they may split, and somebody like Kamala Harris could take advantage of that. But this is interesting, talking about coming out of the woods. That could be a strong possibility. But what is going to happen with this investigation by Bill Barr, Sean? What's going to happen there? I mean, do we have a situation next year where, just like Mueller was always a pain in the you-know-what to Trump, are we going to have a situation next year where Bill Barr and that special prosecutor, more or less, is going to be bringing stuff up and indicting people in an election year?
I would like to think so, after what was attempted to take down this president in a small coup. Again, we'll have to wait and see where the evidence takes us. I do have a lot of confidence in John Durham. He's the guy that took down Whitey Bulger and FBI agents in the Boston area in that criminality. I think Barr is a true Justice Department professional. He cares about the FBI, he cares about the DOJ, and I think he cares about the law.
Yeah.
And I think if there's any evidence there, he's going to follow it to the very end. And we'll see if that ends up in indictments or not. But let's not. He faces a tough uphill battle against the swamp, against the establishment, and don't forget, the Clintons are still out.
He's a pretty tough guy, I think. And Bruce, along the same lines, you answered the same question, but also the New York Times, of all people, wrote an article that they discovered that 50 FBI agents were indictable because they had leaked to the media, which is apparently a felon.
Yeah.
So that shows you that it is widespread. It's a practice. It's a standard that's used by the FBI. So Trump was right when he was talking about these. I don't think the whole FBI, obviously, they do a great job. They got a lot of things they have to do to protect this country. But also on CNN, they had a special. Now, CNN is doing good on specials, okay? Mm-hmm. They did one about Watergate and Nixon. Of course, they crucified Nixon. But they had in there the part that Mark Felt, who was the deputy director of the FBI, was deep throat.
Right.
Now, nobody said anything, but technically Mark Felt, talking to the Washington Post, was committing a felony against the president.
It's the most unprosecuted offense in Washington. They've been leaking. They leak
Both
classified
parties.
in both
Yeah,
parties.
both parties,
Both
all the
parties
time.
do it in both justice departments and run by the FBI and whoever. I just think that the thing I have confidence in Bill Barr is I think he wants to restore the credibility of the Justice Department
time.
and the FBI. And in order to do that, heads are going to have to roll.
Well, I tell you, it sent a shiver up all their backsides the other day when that female reporter, I don't remember who she was, but she asked them, she said, "Don't you worry about your legacy, because they've already begun to demonize you, and it's going to get much worse, and you want to take care of your legacy." And this was the scary answer. He said, number one, when I went into this, I knew I was going to be demonized and attacked. Number two, we're all going to die someday,
Right.
including me and including you. And my legacy is going to be that I straightened out the Justice Department, and that I discovered that a wrong was being done that had to be fixed to preserve this country and make it safer. I said, that's going to be my legacy, and I don't care about what anybody says about me. Now, if I'm on the other side of that and I'm the bad guy, and this guy, that's his character, I got to worry, because he's going to go wherever he has to go to fix this thing. So I think that's a good sign for us in the future.
Hope so.
Knock wood.
Yeah.
Knock wood.
Final question. Go ahead.
Wait, I'll believe that once, if an individual, for example, has taken a hammer to a bunch of cell phones or destroyed subpoenaed information on their hard drive, if that individual, whoever it might be, if that individual is brought to justice, then I'll believe they're really serious about this stuff.
Yeah, we got to see it.
Yeah.
But I put it out there, and of course I've been watching MSNBC, CNN as much as I could. I mean, at some point,
You have a much higher tolerance.
I'm telling you, I mean, at some point it just goes.
how many-
A masochist?
How many minutes of Rachel Maddow can you take?
About
He's a
3.
nice fella, but come on.
I know,
You know?
about 3. I saw a picture. Listen, young, there was a guy showed me when I was in the legislature. He pulls his computer over on the monitor. He shows me this picture of this extremely gorgeous blonde-haired woman. You know who it was? Rachel Maddow.
Really?
He said, who is that? Who is that? It was Eric Bromwell. He said, who is that? And I said, I have no idea, but she's very attractive. He said, that's Rachel Maddow.
Well,
So
you
now
know
I
who
can,
liked her?
Who?
You know, Roger Ailes. Roger Ailes of Fox News thought she had a wonderful future.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
2 last questions. Okay. Number one, both of you guys, Fox News advertised, I don't know if you've seen this lately, a game show coming on by Justin Timberlake. Now, is that the death knell? Or is Fox, because the Sons, we know the Sons are liberals, right? Rupert Murdoch, the Sons are going to take over.
I know
Is that
they're-
on Fox or on Fox News?
I think it's
Big
on Fox.
On Fox,
isn't it?
yeah.
Big Fox, it's a
Yeah.
game show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What,
that's not
are we
Fox
going
News
through the
Channel.
transformation?
No, well, I think Fox News Channel is going through a transformation, absolutely. When I heard a news anchor the other night on Special Report, Brett Baer, lead off with love him or hate him, you have to give Donald Trump credit. He does get that's an editorial comment in the news.
Yeah.
And that now is being tolerated at
Well, that would be
Fox.
terrible. That would be terrible if Fox went off the air, or not off the air, but off the tracks. And
I
suddenly
think
started-
they're trying to pull in Democrat numbers, and it might be brilliant on their part. They're trying to snuff out CNN, and their ratings are down 16%.
Yeah, they're terrible.
MSNBC's down, and maybe they're trying to pull all the Democrats over to Fox, but they better be careful because they could lose. There are certain states that are just automatically out of the category there. So, but I do think he easily wins re-election.
Do you think if we were to take California, Oregon, and Washington, legally through constitutional means, divorce them from the United States, let them separate like the Civil War, build a Trump all the way to the north, and then deport all of the socialist liberal wackos and have them live there, would that be a West Coast solution?
It's one, certainly.
That's one. But because I hear from people, they actually listen, they call in from California, and there are conservatives in these states. There are a lot of moderates who actually
They're
are hanging
suffering.
in there, and they're suffering, and eventually, hopefully one day we can right the ship on the West Coast.
good
I
luck.
think the key really is getting rid of the Ninth Circuit and reforming the Ninth Circuit out there.
And Trump can, to 2
and-
terms, he can help that
in
out
the second
quite a
term,
bit.
he
Yeah.
would make great inroads.
Finally, Maryland, though. Now, Maryland, the problem with Maryland is, of course, Pancho Villa once said that the great disservice that God did to Mexico was to put it next to the United States. Well, the great disservice that God did to us is to put us next to Washington, D.C. So now we have Prince George's County, we have Montgomery County. They're bleeding into Howard County. They're bleeding into Frederick County. And then, of course, we've got Baltimore City, whatever you want to define that as, that joins with that axis of evil and destroys this state. Down in the General Asylum, I can tell you, man, and I was talking to Nino Mangione and some of the new delegates and talking to some of the veteran delegates, and they said, it's scarier than ever. And not only that these people are wackies, but they're bullies. They're very nasty. They don't want to hear what you have. Like Bruce was saying earlier about trying to be cordial and civil, that's not on their playbook. They're just nasty, and they're going to do what they want to do. Yeah. And they stand up on the floor of the General Assembly, they insult people. Now, Mike Bush, one good thing about him was he wouldn't allow that. Now, I don't know about Adrienne Jones. She's going to be like it. But the state of Maryland, I have very deep concerns for.
Well, when you have stories about the other Mike picking somebody up and pinning them against the wall because they're just reading the legislation, that's a fair indication there's some bullying going on there.
It
And
is.
that's not a new habit.
No.
That's been going on for a while.
No, it has, Bruce, but it's getting worse. It's
Yeah.
getting worse. The new bunch that came in, it was like, I don't know, 40 or 50 people. And I would see it every 4 years. Every time I got reelected, I'd see it's getting worse and worse and worse. And when you think about the future, is there hope? But you look at the dynamics of populations in this state. You know, do you have the hope? I mean, look at Larry Hogan. Larry Hogan, we can talk about him all day. Of course, Donald Trump called me last night and said he was greatly relieved that Larry's not running for president, so he feels good about that. And I thought, well, you win some, you lose some.
It just seems to me that the Democrat Party, the classic liberals, the Jeffersonian Democrats, Bruce mentions them, they're gone.
They're gone.
And the fact is, this is the last ditch Hail Mary pass for the Democrat Party to regain power, is through this promise of free everything, free tuition, free this, free health care, which is going to bankrupt the nation. And here in Maryland, it is going to bankrupt our economy.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that I don't think it'll carry the day. I think
It's hard to run against Santa Claus. man.
it is hard to run against Santa Claus, but at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And people somewhere are going to have to pay. And at that point, we reach the point of the tipping point where it's going to be completely out of balance.
Well, you know, the people for the first time really in this country are having the great opportunity to witness socialism and stupidism on a grand scale. First of all, number one, we have the presidential candidates. And they just get worse and worse every week. Then we have the House being controlled by the socialists and the Democrats. And people are now witnessing these folks when they are in positions of power and authority. And I think these polls are indicating that they're saying the general reaction is, what? So the question is, will the socialism and the extremism devour the Democrat Party at some point?
I think it will.
Joe Biden.
I think it will. I think the Democrats are looking at Venezuela in their party. They're going to have to do something, have to massive reform, because you just can't. We've tried. Socialism has been tried in umpteen different countries, and it has failed every single time.
Never been a success.
It's never been a success. So why now do you think it's going to be a success here in the United States?
And does the Democrat Party, Bruce, have any of moderates and young people who might? Well, the younger people are worse.
moderates.
Yeah. So there's no moderate wing. There's no challenge. There's no initiative coming that would change the party. The party's on that track, and that's where it's going.
Well, I think Nancy Pelosi has a caucus she's having difficulty controlling, in large part because you have the representatives Tlaib and Omar, and you have AOC, and these people who it always sounds to me like they're in a college seminar and they don't fully understand the way the world actually works, and they're going to say Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said recently that your right to have a nice place to live basically supersedes the right of the landlord to make money. Well, no, that it does not actually, and it's not a right. That I mean, things are getting pretty muddy here. One observation before we wrap up. Did you realize that in Great Britain, the Speaker of the House is not allowed to say anything? Think about that.
Yeah, it's a.
Wouldn't that be nice here?
It's a ceremonial.
It's a
role.
ceremonial office. I don't know how he or she
I
is selected though, because it was a
I
woman
could
for a
do
long
that.
time.
Right.
Imagine never hearing the Speaker, never hearing her again.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Bruce. You know, you get a lot of calls, and Sean gets a lot of calls about people say, "Oh, we hate Mike Miller, we hate Mike Bush, and we wish we could just get rid of them." You may yearn for the good old days of Mike Bush and Mike Miller
Well,
when this generation takes
That's
over.
true. I do think nationally, as we wrap things up here, I know we're running long on time, but I think this is a great opportunity for President Trump and for the Republican Party and for conservatives to get out there and articulate the differences between free markets and socialism, between government-run health care and free market health care reform. Get out there, define these differences, give voters a viable option, and I think the voters of America will choose smart.
Knock wood.
I think they will. I think when they've given a choice between the good and the bad and the ugly, they're going to take the good. Anyway, Sean Casey, Bruce Elliott, WCBM 680 AM. your talk station that will give you the conservative and other viewpoints you don't hear about. And I want to thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you,
Glad to be
Pat.
here. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Did you?
I'm talking as if I'm talking with somebody saying interesting kinds of things, referring to the blank screen to my right, and thinking deeply, making one of those faces that says, it's worth considering. Okay. I wish I'd thought of that before. Yeah. You mean you zip up after you leave the... Oh. So usually well, why do you wash your hands after? Because you know where it's been. Why don't you wash your hands before?
That's good.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the call.
We are.
All right, so once again, Talk Radio 680 WCBM with Sean and Frank, Maryland's Wake Up Call. We are here each and every weekday morning from 5 to 9 a.m. to make sure that you are informed on the latest news, stimulating talk, breaking news, and that is the most important thing we can bring to you each and every day, from the president's re-election campaign all the way to whether or not Melania is being ignored by the media once again. You need more? Is that good?
That's good.
All right.